The lock clicked, then jammed, refusing to budge no matter how many times Alex turned the key. At first, he assumed it was a glitch. He pulled out his phone and launched the control app for his smart lock system. The screen was blank, no signal, no response. Perplexed, he tried the backup key card, still nothing. As he leaned in for a closer look, his jaw tightened. The entire smart lock unit had been ripped out and replaced by a cheap, metal deadbolt that looked like it belonged on a bargain bin storage locker. Taped to the center of the door was a printed notice, stamped with the whole letterhead. It read, "Your home access has been revoked due to multiple violations." Violations? Alex hadn't received any warnings. He'd never even heard of these supposed infractions, let alone imagine they existed. He stood motionless, staring at the front door of his own house, locked out, humiliated, and blindsided. Across the street, neighbors peeked from behind their blinds. One made eye contact, then quickly vanished from view. This wasn't just a lockout. It was a calculated move. Someone had entered his home without permission, dismantled his access system, and installed a crude replacement all while he was at work. And he already knew exactly who had the arrogance to pull it off. The day had started like any other. Alex had brewed his coffee, fed his cat Pixel, and headed to the security firm where he worked as a systems analyst. His job: designing secure networks and physical access controls for high-profile clients, including government contracts. If anyone understood how to block or grant entry, it was him, which made it all the more ridiculous that someone thought they could outsmart him on his own doorstep. Karen Whitmore, the self-proclaimed queen of the hoe, she had always despised his presence in the neighborhood, complaining about the excess wiring, the blinking lights on his discreet battery cabinet, and his general sense of independence. Her campaign to micromanage the community had grown more aggressive in recent months. Still, Alex never imagined she'd take it this far. He'd received a few passive-aggressive letters before, criticizing his front yard tech box, but the box was legal. He'd even responded courteously. Apparently, that wasn't enough. Alex took a slow breath and stepped away from the door. He didn't shout, he didn't bang on the lock, he didn't panic. He was a systems man, and this was just another system to dismantle. He drove to a nearby cafe copyright and opened his laptop. First step, check the camera feed. Offline, as expected, but he had built his surveillance system to automatically back up to an encrypted server. Within minutes, he had the footage. The video showed Karen, standing in front of his house in broad daylight, giving instructions while a man in a nondescript work van dismantled his smart lock. Her voice came through clearly, picked up by a hidden mic concealed in a planter. She was instructing the man on how to disable internal wiring before replacing it. Then came the audacity. "Make it look legal enough so he doesn't have a case," she said. Alex let out a quiet chuckle. They really had no idea who they were messing with. He considered going straight to the police, but Karen would likely invoke HOA authority, dragging the matter into a bureaucratic mess. What he needed wasn't just revenge. He wanted precision. He wanted exposure. He called a few trusted friends in legal and cybersecurity circles, explaining the situation while gathering timestamps, metadata, and full-resolution video backups. Then, he called a locksmith, not to break in, but to prepare for a legal, documented re-entry once he had all the paperwork in hand. That night, he stayed at his friend Miguel's place, enjoying a quiet dinner and pretending everything was normal. But his mind was working, planning. Back in the neighborhood, Karen was already spinning her story. She told neighbors Alex had violated HOA visual standards and installed unauthorized surveillance equipment. She even claimed an emergency vote had passed, giving the HOA authority to restrict access to violators. Many residents, confused but cowed by her intensity, nodded along. They didn't know the truth. There had been no vote, no filed resolution. Karen was making up rules as she went, thinking her position made her untouchable. That illusion was about to shatter. The next morning, Alex walked casually past his house and placed a small device behind the brick planter. It looked like a weed sensor. In reality, it was a short-range directional antenna, monitoring interference and tracking any attempts to connect to the dummy system Karen had installed. She'd stripped away the visible tech, but the deeper layers of Alex's network were still running, Cloaked and resilient, he had built redundancies into everything. Tamper with one layer, and the rest would respond. And now, they were logging data. By mid-afternoon, Alex was ready. He printed copies of his property deed, the HOA bylaws, and the original architectural approval documents for his battery cabinet. He walked into the HOA clubhouse where Karen held court with two board members and calmly dropped the documents onto the table. Karen arched an eyebrow and offered a thin, performative smile. "Oh Alex, we were just about to contact you." He looked her dead in the eye and said, "You broke into my home and tampered with my property while I was at work. That's criminal trespassing." Karen twitched slightly. "We acted in accordance with the community's emergency standards," she said. "There were multiple complaints." Alex calmly pulled out his tablet and tapped the screen. A video began to play, a footage of Karen, clear as day, instructing the contractor on how to remove his smart lock. Karen lunged toward the tablet, trying to shut it off. One of the board members asked nervously, "When was this recorded?" The other simply stared at the screen, face pale. Alex replied, cool and steady, "I haven't even started." "That was just the trailer. The full feature's coming soon." Karen fumbled for excuses, something about context and community safety, but the panic in her voice gave her away. Her grip on control was slipping. Alex didn't press further. Not yet. He wanted her to feel the unraveling slowly, and inescapably. That night, Alex sat in his car across the street from his own home. He watched silently through a secondary feed, a hidden camera embedded in his exterior lighting fixture, still active. Karen appeared again, walking across his porch, flashlight in hand. She was speaking into her phone, though he couldn't hear her words. But her posture told the story, tense, tight, defensive. She was trying to manage a situation that was already spiraling beyond her control. Alex opened a secure note on his device and began typing a list. Every violation she'd committed, every misstep, every lie. He wasn't locked out anymore. Now, he was preparing to open every single door she thought she had closed. The morning after the HOA confrontation, Alex sat in his home office, coffee in hand, documents spread out before him. He was back inside, the unauthorized deadbolt removed and his original smart lock restored under police supervision the afternoon prior. But satisfaction? That was still out of reach. The physical damage could be reversed. The deeper damage, the violation of trust, privacy, and autonomy, ran far deeper. Karen had weaponized her authority. She had invaded his home, disrupted his life, and cloaked it all in the name of community standards. Alex had seen power abused before, but never so directly, and never with this level of arrogance. Now, it was time to dismantle that power, one deception at a time. He opened the latest draft of the community bylaws and began reviewing them line by line, cross-referencing them with the printed list of violations Karen had delivered. The inconsistencies were laughable. One claim cited a fire code restriction for energy storage systems, a rule that applied only to commercial buildings. Another accused him of unauthorized surveillance, even though HOA rules only prohibited cameras pointed directly into a neighbor's window, which his setup never did. He highlighted each fabricated allegation and attached footnotes pulled from official county codes and HOA documentation. He was building a case, thorough, factual, and irrefutable. This folder would be the foundation of both his defense, he broken bar, and his counterattack. Then he turned his focus to something even more telling: the voting records. According to the HOA's own digital archive, any enforcement action, including entry onto a resident's property, required a minimum of 3 board member votes, logged in an official meeting. Alex accessed the digital logs. What he found was strange. All the timestamps for the vote were identical, down to the second. That wasn't just improbable, it was impossible, unless someone had manually altered the records, a broken bar, or faked them entirely. He dug deeper. The emails associated with the supposed votes shared suspicious similarities. 2 addresses ended in info, rather than the HOA's standard org domain. Alex ran a domain registration check. Both addresses had been created just 3 weeks earlier, and both were registered to a private proxy shield, a classic tactic used to hide the identity of whoever set them up. Karen clearly hadn't wanted anyone to trace the addresses back to her, but Alex wasn't just anyone. He ran a diagnostic trace using one of his custom scripts. No surprise, Both email addresses linked back to the same IP range as Karen's home network. He leaned back in his chair, eyes fixed on the screen, a slow grin spreading across his face. She hadn't just bent the rules, she had committed digital forgery on an official HOA governance system. That alone was grounds for removal. It might even be criminal. He backed up the evidence, saved it across several encrypted drives, and emailed a copy to his lawyer. Then he placed a call to Riley, an old college friend now working in private digital forensics. Riley had consulted on multiple HOA fraud cases before. After hearing the summary, Riley laughed for nearly a minute straight. "I'll help, pro bono," he said, still chuckling. "If only for the entertainment value." Riley promised a full technical breakdown, a domain spoofing, timestamp anomalies, all of it. Alex knew he'd have it within a day. By that afternoon, Alex was ready to escalate. He returned to the HOA clubhouse, not to confront, but to request the official meeting minutes that supposedly authorized the lockout. Karen wasn't there. Instead, a visibly uncomfortable young board member named Lindsay greeted him at the desk. She handed him a folder with printed notes. Alex scanned them, just as expected. Vague language about resident safety and unauthorized equipment. No mention of his name, no specifics. He asked gently, "Did you vote to change my lock?" She hesitated, glanced around, then shook her head slowly. "I didn't even know it happened until after," she whispered. That sealed it. Karen had either forged the vote or intimidated everyone into silence after the fact. Either way, it wasn't legitimate. Alex left the clubhouse and walked over to the community bulletin board. That's where HOA policies were typically posted. Nothing, no resolution, no emergency access announcement, just lawn care coupons and a flyer for the upcoming Easter egg hunt. On his way back to the car, he ran into Mr. Halverson, a retired engineer who had lived in the neighborhood for over 20 years. Halverson gave him a knowing look. In a hushed voice, he said this wasn't Karen's first shady move. A few months earlier, she had fined a neighbor for a bird feeder retroactively. When they refused to pay, their landscaping permit mysteriously got delayed, a broken bar until they caved. Alex thanked him and walked on. The cracks were spreading. That evening, Alex activated a honeypot, a fake Wi-Fi network with a tempting name, HOA Access Control. It mimicked a poorly secured system, the kind someone arrogant but tech clueless might think was real. It was bait. Karen had already tampered with his equipment once. If she or someone acting for her tried again, they'd see the access point and assume it was his actual setup. But in reality, it was isolated, and it was designed to log everything: device ID, typing speed, access path, even the exact timing of every command. Within 2 hours, someone connected an older Android tablet, outdated firmware. The device probed for credentials, tried several common dictionary passwords, and attempted to upload a script named access_override.js. Alex watched in real time, recording every move. The IP traced back to the HOA clubhouse, but this time, he had more than signs of tampering. He had evidence of unauthorized surveillance, digital intrusion, and system manipulation. Later that night, Alex drove past the clubhouse. From the shadows, he spotted lights on in the back room. Using a long lens camera, he zoomed in. There was Dylan, Karen's son, seated at a desk. Same tablet, headset on, documents spread across the table. One document had Alex's name in bold letters. They weren't just reacting, they were building something. A cover story, a justification, maybe even a fake security narrative. Then, the final blow of the day hit Alex's inbox. An anonymous email from concerned.resident124 It contained a screenshot of a group chat between Karen and several other board members. In it, she bragged about removing the tech nuisance and referred to Alex as a threat to the visual purity of the neighborhood. Exactly the kind of language that would raise red flags in the right hands. Alex replied just once, "Thank you, you've helped more than you know." Then he archived the chat and added it to a growing folder, now labeled, Karen Case. It wasn't about a lock anymore. It was about layers of power, manipulation, and digital incompetence stacked together like a house of cards. And Alex knew exactly how to pull the bottom one out. That night, he sat in his home office, lights dimmed, Monitor glowing softly, a blue light casting sharp shadows on the walls. Data from the honeypot kept streaming in, every keystroke, every action. The longer the intruder fumbled, the more they revealed. They didn't realize how loud they were being in digital terms. The tablet's device ID was locked. Even the typing patterns were logged, fast, erratic, unsure. Someone was way out of their depth. And there was one final trap Alex had built in. A file titled HO_AC_codes.txt, just obvious enough to tempt someone careless. Dylan had opened it, or say he downloaded it. That single click triggered a location ping that confirmed what Alex had already suspected. The tablet was inside the HO Clubhouse's back room. They were practically handing him the case, but Alex wasn't ready to report anything, not yet. This wasn't about catching them in the act. It was about building something airtight, so complete that when he moved a broken bar, they wouldn't have a single place to hide. The walls were closing in. Alex printed the interaction logs, connection data, and screenshots showing the tablet's attempts to spoof credentials. He stapled them together, slid them into a folder labeled Phase 2, and tucked it into a drawer beside a flash drive containing every backup copy of the evidence. When the moment came, even if they tried to erase everything, he'd still be able to burn it all down with just one file. The next day, Alex returned to the neighborhood in full view. No more hiding, no more subtle moves. He walked past Karen's house deliberately and gave her a polite nod. She froze mid-motion, garden shovel in hand, her expression tight and uncertain. No clipboard, no smug smile, just discomfort at the look of someone who lost control of a story she thought she owned. Alex didn't say a word. Instead of confronting her, he spent the afternoon at a local print shop, creating a single-page flyer. In bold at the top, it read, "Do you know what your HO board is really doing?" At the bottom, it linked to a private but publicly viewable folder. Inside, documents outlining unauthorized votes, fabricated violation letters, and footage of tampering, each piece carefully labeled with full context. He didn't plaster them around the neighborhood. He posted one copy on the community bulletin board, right next to the official HO calendar. Then he went home. No confrontation, no drama, just bait. And just like the honeypot, someone took it. That evening, he got a ping from the file hosting service. The documents had been downloaded 3 times in under 15 minutes, all from IP addresses tied to the neighborhood. One of them belonged to Lindsay, the nervous board member who had handed him the doctored meeting notes. The other 2 were unknown, likely concerned residents. Less than an hour later, he got a text from an anonymous number. "I didn't vote for anything. She's lying to all of us." Alex smiled. That was all he needed. That night, Karen moved again. The honeypot logged a new connection, at this time from a device labeled K_Whitmore_iPad. The digital signature confirmed it was hers. She had accessed the decoy dashboard, likely hoping to find something she could twist and use against Alex. There was nothing of substance, just carefully crafted phony access logs, designed to look questionable. She clicked through tab after tab, unknowingly activating deeper tracking scripts. Every click, every scroll, every attempt all streamed straight to Alex's main server. When she tried to download a file labeled resident_surveillance_plans.pdf, it triggered a silent alert. Alex watched it unfold in real time. She was desperate, searching for something to justify her actions. But what she didn't know was that the tablet she used hadn't muted its microphone. Alex's code had triggered an audio log the moment she accessed the site. Her own voice was captured, fragments of whispered strategy. "This will shut him up. We'll say it was a safety threat." Her words were now layered on top of the video footage, digital traces, and forged records. She had delivered the final piece of evidence personally. The next morning, Alex visited Riley's office downtown. Riley had spent the last 2 days building a full forensic report. It was devastating. The domain spoofing was crude. Timestamps had been altered using basic tools. The so-called HO vote logs fell apart under even the lightest scrutiny. The forged websites, registered under a proxy tied to Karen's billing address, all thanks to one tiny mistake. She'd reused her recovery email for the fake board accounts, the same one she used for a coupon app. Riley had nearly cried laughing when he found that. Alex compiled everything into a single, clean presentation. It told the full story clearly and plainly. Screenshots sat side by side, real versus fake, emails, chat logs, forensic breakdowns, even audio clips of Karen's voice. He uploaded it to a private share and scheduled it. Friday, 7 p.m., the hour when most people were just settling in for the weekend day, likely checking email. Everyone in the HOA directory would receive it. The final line of the message read, "I was locked out, but now we all deserve to know who holds the key." Before Friday came, Alex made one final visit to the HOA clubhouse. This time, he wasn't alone. His lawyer stood beside him, and with them was a representative from the county housing department. They'd reviewed his report, and they had found sufficient cause to begin a formal investigation into potential misconduct. The moment Karen saw the trio enter, her expression crumbled like a cracked Section 8. Alex's lawyer handed her a printed dossier at the evidence and announced that a formal complaint had been filed. She started to argue, but the county representative cut her off with a single line. "Until this is resolved, you are suspended from all HOA duties." Alex said nothing. He simply watched. That night, he sat in his living room, pixel curled against his side, as neighborhood emails detonated one after another. Residents who once ignored him now replied with shock, anger, disbelief. Some demanded a new election, others wanted Karen reported to the police. A few even asked Alex to run the HOA himself. He didn't answer a not yet. He had never wanted power, only peace. Leaning back, he exhaled slowly. Every arrogant step Karen had taken, every file she opened, had funneled her straight into a trap of her own making. Now she wasn't just losing her seat, she was losing the illusion of control she'd clutched so tightly. For the first time since that lock had clicked, Alex felt the doors swinging open in his favor. By Saturday morning, chaos reigned. The email blast had done its job and then some. Within minutes of reading the report, residents were calling emergency board meetings. Others marched door to door, clutching printouts and shaking their heads. Karen's carefully polished persona as a strict taboo-to-fair community leader lay shattered beneath cold evidence and her own digital footprints. Some were aghast at the recordings. Most were furious over the forged votes and fake violations. But the harshest sting came from realizing they'd been bullied and deceived by someone who never cared about fairness, only about control. Alex kept a low profile, though more than a dozen neighbors thanked him for exposing the rot. One even delivered a homemade pie with a note, "Sorry for ever doubting you." He didn't gloat, he sent a quiet thank you, then returned to tightening the final bolts on his case. Because for Alex, the work wasn't done until the last lock clicked shut. The digital evidence had sparked internal fallout, but Karen still needed a legal reckoning, one that would keep her from ever pulling this stunt again. And Alex had one card left to play. On Sunday afternoon, a CODIA enforcement inspector acting on the complaint filed through Alex's attorney arrived unannounced at the HOA clubhouse. Alex watched discreetly from his car as the inspector circled the building, clipboard in hand. He noted everything: improperly stored paint cans, exposed wiring near an ancient fuse box, a storage closet stacked to the ceiling with flammable materials and unsorted equipment. Worst of all was the folder on the conference table labeled Emergency Lockout Authority. Inside, printed pages of bogus policies, each stamped with a logo that didn't match the real HOA letterhead. When questioned, Theo Broken Bar, story continues. The remaining board members confessed they'd never seen those files before. Karen had been running a shadow HOA from her office, fabricating rules and using her position as a personal control center. The inspector documented every infraction and issued preliminary citations on the spot. Administrative operations at the clubhouse were suspended pending further review. Karen wasn't even present. She was holed up in her house, blinds drawn, phone off, likely realizing the walls were closing in faster than she could spin new lies. News of the citations spread just as quickly as the digital expose. Copyright. Neighbors who had once stayed silent now openly questioned every fine they'd paid, every violation notice they'd received. At an impromptu resident gathering, an older couple stood up and shared that Karen had forced them to remove their porch swing years ago, claiming it was a safety hazard. Turns out, it had been fully compliant with HOA regulations. Feeling the heat, The remaining board members called an emergency vote of no confidence. Only a small number of residents were needed to push it through. Within 48 hours, Karen was officially removed, her title dissolved, her authority stripped, her name erased from the board roster. But Alex wasn't finished. He wanted to make sure Karen couldn't quietly slither back into power through back doors or future manipulation. That meant a final move: public accountability. With his lawyer's guidance, Alex filed a civil suit charging Karen with invasion of privacy, unlawful entry, defamation, and digital fraud. It wasn't about money. The lawsuit was tactical. It enabled formal discovery, meaning Karen's devices and communications would be subject to forensic analysis. Every deleted email, every forgotten message between her and her son, every fake violation and falsified vote, all of it would become part of the public record. The suit also drew the attention of the HOA's Parent Association at the state level. They dispatched a representative to interview residents, audit governance procedures, and assess compliance with federal data handling laws. Because once Karen and Dylan started forging electronic records and spoofing domains, they had stepped far beyond neighborhood politics. They had entered legal territory with real teeth, and Karen had no idea how traceable her actions had become. One afternoon, Alex got a call from Riley. Nearly breathless with excitement, he'd uncovered that Karen's son had used a government discount to purchase surveillance tools for their Scheme software restricted for official school or civic use. He had obtained it using credentials borrowed from an old acquaintance, fabricating a temporary identity. Federal impersonation charges were now on the table. They're not just shooting themselves in the foot, Riley laughed. They're walking through a minefield blindfolded. Alex thanked him and forwarded the evidence to his lawyer, who added it to the ever-growing court file. The judge scheduled a preliminary hearing within a week. Karen showed up in formal clothes, flanked by a lawyer who looked like he'd stumbled into a disaster he couldn't untangle. She avoided eye contact with everyone. Alex arrived calm and quiet, carrying only a slim binder and a flash drive. When the judge asked for initial evidence, Alex played a short audio clip. Karen's voice, clear and unmistakable: "We'll say it was a safety threat," followed by an order to disable the smart lock. That was all it took. The judge ruled the case would proceed to full discovery, noting the initial evidence strongly suggested civil misconduct and potential criminal activity. Outside the courthouse, Alex walked past Karen without a word. She didn't speak either. She looked smaller than he remembered, like the weight of exposure had finally settled on her shoulders. No arrogance, no clipboard, just silence. Outside, a similar broken bar. A small group of neighbors stood outside the courthouse, clapping him on the back. They told Alex they'd never seen anyone take on an entire corrupt home machine and win. He smiled, not for the attention, but because it was finally over. The very system that had betrayed him had turned against the one who thought she controlled it. Once, his locks had been changed without his permission. Now, every door Karen had slammed shut on others was swinging back hard, and Alex had made sure the hinges would never be the same. The neighborhood, once quiet and stiff under her iron grip, was changing. Her name being wiped from the HOA board wasn't just procedural, it was symbolic. It was a release. The community felt lighter, freer. Residents who had spent years under her shadow, bullied by baseless citations and fake rules, were now beginning to reconnect. Flower pots returned to front porches. Porch swings reappeared. Even lawn gnomes made a defiant comeback. Despite Karen's infamous rule against ornamental clutter, people smiled more. Doors stayed open longer. But through it all, Alex remained steady. He hadn't asked for attention, and even though it now followed him like a shadow, he treated it like everything else, with calm precision and quiet focus. This had never been about power. It was about justice, and that mission was nearly complete. Still, one final task remained. The civil case was advancing quickly, and discovery had revealed far more than Alex had expected. Karen's communications with Dylan included receipts for illegally obtained surveillance software, copies of altered board resolutions, drafts of fake violation letters, complete with placeholder names ready to be filled in. But the most damning evidence came in the form of a voice memo. Karen's voice, clear as day. "If we can't make him move, "We'll make him miserable." That sentence became the headline of the final legal summary submitted to the court. After reviewing the overwhelming mountain of evidence, the judge didn't just recommend full restitution. He referred portions of the case to the district attorney's office for potential criminal prosecution and charges related to forgery, fraud, unlawful access of private data systems. The message was unmistakable. Karen's days of hiding behind fake authority were broken bar. With the case gaining media attention, Alex began receiving a steady stream of emails and calls from across the state. Other communities were reaching out, some seeking advice, others looking for a way forward against their own overreaching HOA boards. They wanted to know how to protect their digital systems, how to secure their homes against the very people meant to safeguard them. Some even offered Alex consulting work. Others just thanked him for proving that neighborhood tyrants weren't untouchable. Alex helped where he could, but he always kept the focus clear: empower residents, organize, document, fight back with truth, not chaos. Back home, the HOA was rebuilding. After Karen's expulsion, the neighborhood held a special election. Many urged Alex to run. Each time, he declined with the same reply: "I just want to live in peace." Instead, he nominated Mrs. Jenkins, a retired school principal with a reputation for fairness and quiet authority. She won almost unanimously. Under her leadership, the new board prioritized transparency. They launched a public online portal where meeting minutes were posted in real time, and residents could submit proposals or concerns without fear. Violation notices now included timestamped photos and came with a proper appeals process. No more mystery fines, no more threats after dark. 1 week after the new board was sworn in, the neighborhood held a community potluck. Alex showed up reluctantly, but soon found himself easing into the warmth of it. Neighbors offered him barbecue ribs, lemonade, and sincere thanks. Children dashed past him, laughing. For the first time in months, he saw his neighborhood not as a battlefield, but as what it had once been: a place full of potential. A few residents asked if he'd ever consider teaching a digital security workshop. He said maybe. They seemed genuinely excited by the idea. That night, as he walked home with the sun dipping low behind the rooftops, golden shadows stretched long across the sidewalk. The quiet had returned, but this time, it was the good kind. Karen, meanwhile, had gone silent. Her once manicured yard was overgrown, her blinds drawn. The woman who used to patrol the streets with a clipboard and a measuring tape now avoided them entirely. Her mailbox overflowed. The new board had formally ordered her to remove unpermitted surveillance equipment from her property, and the irony wasn't lost on anyone. Public records showed she was under audit by the State HOA Compliance Bureau, with criminal charges pending for document forgery. Her son had quietly left town, likely trying to avoid further scrutiny. The empire they built on false authority had crumbled, and now stood as a cautionary tale. Alex's house, once targeted, had become the safest home on the block, not just because of its layered security, but because everyone now knew, if someone tried something shady, they wouldn't get away with it. His network of sensors, cameras, and off-site backups operated quietly in the background. He lived his life in peace. One evening, he installed the final upgrade to his system, a discreet voice access panel integrated with facial recognition. That night, as he approached his front door, the panel scanned his face, pinged softly, and said, "Welcome back, Alex." It wasn't just a security feature, it was a reminder. This was his home again, in every sense that mattered. As spring gave way to summer, Alex kept working remotely, starting each day with a cup of coffee and Pixel curled beside his keyboard. He'd glance now and then at the corner of his screen, where the live feed from his porch remained perfectly still and undisturbed. No more surprise visits, no more fake citations. No one dared tamper with anything, not out of fear, but out of respect. Word had spread. This wasn't just some tech guy. This was the man who got locked out of his own house and still beat the people who thought they controlled the keys. And now, every door he walked through opened on his terms. One afternoon, Mrs. Jenkins stopped by with a thank you basket and an envelope. Inside was a letter signed by dozens of residents, expressing their gratitude. Tucked behind it was a certificate that read, honorary advisor to the HOA board. It was purely symbolic. No title, no vote, exactly how Alex preferred it. He pinned the letter to his wall. The certificate, he slipped into a drawer. He didn't need to frame it. His satisfaction didn't come from recognition or titles but from knowing he had reclaimed what was his and helped others do the same. As the sun dipped below the rooftops and street lights flickered on one by one, Alex stood on his porch, arms crossed, watching the world he helped restore settle into calm. For the first time in a long while, he had nothing left to monitor, no threat to prepare for, no intrusion to defend against, just a breeze in the air, the distant sound of kids on bikes, and the soft click of a door or a broken bar, that now locked and unlocked only for him.